Imagine two countries. They just hit a record $900 billion in trade. This all-time high cements one as the United States' #1 trading partner. One might expect this would mean a strong, collaborative relationship, a partnership built on mutual economic benefit. And yet, a former president, leading in the polls for a return to the White House, is threatening this very partner. He threatens crippling tariffs and even military action, all under the banner of fighting fentanyl. It is a shocking disconnect. It is a stark contrast between economic reality and political rhetoric. On the surface, it appears to be a drug war. It appears to be about securing the border. But what if that is just a smokescreen? What if it is a brilliant, even brutal cover for a far bigger economic war? A war that could redefine global power structures. We are constantly told the crackdown is about securing our border and stopping the fentanyl crisis. This crisis tragically kills over 100,000 Americans annually. That crisis is real and it is devastating. But if this were purely a drug war, a relentless pursuit of the source of the poison, why is it not the primary target China? After all, China is the undisputed, universally acknowledged source of most fentanyl precursor chemicals. It is where the ingredients for this deadly substance originate. Why attack the kitchen when you can go straight to the ingredient supplier? Today, we are not just scratching the surface of this story. We are digging deep. We will cut through sensational headlines and political sound bites. We will reveal the sophisticated, often unseen economic strategy behind Donald Trump's aggressive stance on Mexico. This is not just about border walls or drug cartels. This is a deliberate, calculated play. It could reshape global supply chains. It could fundamentally alter international trade dynamics. This strategy could also profoundly impact investments. It is a hidden agenda, and its implications become clear once understood. Just a decade ago, Mexico was practically an economic afterthought for the United States, especially when compared to China, a manufacturing colossus. China dominated global trade. It churned out everything from iPhones to sneakers, shipping it all across the Pacific to American consumers. Mexico, while a neighbor, was largely overshadowed. But then, something truly extraordinary happened. A tectonic shift occurred in global manufacturing. Many celebrated this shift as the triumph of nearshoring. Over the past few years, Mexico did not just catch up, it zoomed past China, dramatically surpassing it to become the United States' leading trade partner. It was a remarkable turnaround. It was a success story for companies looking to bring their supply chains closer to home, helping them reduce transit times and avoid geopolitical headaches. Given this monumental trade boom and Mexico's newfound status as America's #1 trading partner, one might expect relations to be smooth, even celebratory. But that is not the case. Despite Mexico's meteoric rise and its critical role in our economy, former President Trump is intensifying his threats against our southern neighbor. He is not just talking. He is proposing crippling 25% tariffs on Mexican goods. This move would send shockwaves through both economies. Even more alarmingly, he has been hinting at military intervention against Mexican cartels. This is not just empty rhetoric. It is a clear, unmistakable echo of a deep-seated frustration from his first term. A frustration that simmered even as trade numbers between the two nations quietly soared. He saw a problem then, and he sees it even more clearly now. Now, let us address the elephant in the room, the fentanyl pretext. The official line from the White House, amplified across every major media outlet, constantly centers on Mexico's role as a transit point for fentanyl. Again, let us reiterate, the crisis itself is real. It is urgent. It is tragic. Mexico absolutely has a critical role to play in stopping it. Chinese precursor chemicals are indeed shipped to Mexico. They are often synthesized into the final deadly product by cartels. Then, they are smuggled across the border into American communities. There is no denying the devastation. But here is where the narrative gets tricky. When one starts to truly understand the entire supply chain, a more nuanced picture emerges. This chain goes from raw materials originating in distant Chinese chemical labs. It covers their oceanic journey across the Pacific. It includes their arrival in Mexico, their transformation, and then their final path into the U.S. Mexico becomes less of the ultimate enemy and more of a crucial strategic bottleneck. It is a target, yes, because it is the final assembly and transit point, but it is not the ultimate prize. The ultimate prize, the real strategic objective in this geopolitical chess match, remains China. Mexico, in this larger game, is merely the most convenient and publicly justifiable point of leverage. Now, let us peel back another layer. Let us get to the core mechanism, the subtle yet profound economic reengineering at play. The story of how this entire situation truly came to be begins with a trade agreement designed to protect North American industry. An agreement that, in an ironic twist of fate, inadvertently created a critical loophole. We are talking about the 2020 US-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA. This landmark deal replaced the 26-year-old NAFTA. Its stated purpose was clear: to boost manufacturing within North America, to foster a regional supply chain, and most importantly, to reduce the continent's reliance on China. The architects of USMCA introduced what seemed like a robust rule to achieve this goal. For products, especially automobiles, to qualify for tariff-free access to the lucrative U.S. market, they had to meet a stringent 75% regional content requirement. This meant that 75% of the value of the components in manufacturing had to originate from the U.S., Mexico, or Canada. On paper, it was a strong plan, a veritable fortress designed to keep out goods from outside the continent, particularly those from China, which were increasingly subject to U.S. tariffs. The intention was to incentivize companies to bring their entire production process, or at least the vast majority of it, into North America, creating jobs and fostering economic independence. But what looked like a fortress soon revealed a cleverly disguised backdoor. Chinese firms are masters of navigating global trade complexities. They quickly identified and exploited this seemingly robust rule. They found a way around the 75% requirement, not by directly challenging it, but by redefining what regional content truly meant in practice. Their strategy was ingenious. Instead of shipping finished goods directly from China to the United States and incurring hefty tariffs, they would ship components. These components were often 80 or 90% complete. They would send them to Mexico. Once in Mexico, these components would undergo minimal assembly, sometimes just the final stages of putting a product together or even simply packaging. Then, crucially, they would be labeled Made in Mexico. This seemingly minor step was the key to unlocking the USMCA's tariff exemptions. It allowed Chinese origin goods, now disguised as Mexican, to flood into the U.S. market. Consider this analogy. Imagine a very exclusive club. It has a strict dress code and a hefty membership fee, designed to keep out those who do not meet the criteria. But then, a service entrance is left unguarded. Non-members, with minimal effort and a quick change of clothes once inside, are able to enter through the service door, claim they belong, and enjoy all the club's benefits without paying the fee or meeting the real dress code. That, in essence, is what happened with USMCA. The examples of this backdoor exploitation are not isolated incidents. They represent a significant economic shift. Chinese electronics giants like Hisense and Sunon have poured billions of dollars into Mexico. Hisense, known for its televisions and appliances, now has a massive footprint in Mexico. It assembles products that primarily rely on Chinese-made components. Sunon, a key supplier of cooling solutions for everything from servers to cars, followed suit. It is not just older industries. The electric vehicle sector, a cornerstone of future economic power, is seeing similar moves. BYD, China's largest EV maker, has announced plans for a mega factory in Mexico. Even in the hyper-advanced world of artificial intelligence, tech supply chain leaders like Foxconn are building plants in Mexico. Foxconn is a major partner for companies like NVIDIA. These plants are not necessarily for genuine North American integration of advanced chip manufacturing. They are built to assemble and package complex AI components that largely originate from Asia. This allows them to bypass U.S. tariffs and restrictions. These are not merely assembly plants designed to genuinely integrate into a deeper North American supply chain. They are strategic outposts. They are designed to reroute Chinese origin goods and technology, providing a conduit directly into the lucrative American market. This was not about building North American self-sufficiency. It was about China finding a new way to access the American consumer, untaxed and unburdened by U.S. protectionist measures. This leads us to the critical realization of why Trump's current strategy in Mexico is so aggressive. It also explains why fentanyl is merely the pretext. His first-term approach to China, while impactful in some ways, largely failed in its primary goal. During his initial presidency, Trump imposed 25% tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods. The intention was ambitious and clear. It was to force manufacturing jobs back to the United States, to revitalize American domestic production, and to rebalance the massive trade deficit with China. The belief was that by making Chinese goods more expensive, American companies would naturally bring their factories home, stimulating job growth and economic independence. But the reality was far more complex, and for Trump, it was ultimately frustrating. While the tariffs certainly made headlines and put pressure on China, they largely failed to achieve their primary objective. The expected wave of factories returning to American soil did not materialize as hoped, or at least not at the pace or volume anticipated. Instead, the tariffs had an unintended yet profound consequence. They accelerated a significant shift of Chinese and other global companies not back to the United States, but to Mexico. This created what we now call the China-Mexico-U.S. pipeline. Imagine trying to block a powerful river with a single massive dam. You succeed in stemming the direct flow, but the water does not just disappear. Instead, it finds new, indirect riverbeds. It carves out paths around your obstacle. That is precisely what happened with the tariffs. U.S. direct imports from China did decline on paper. This provided some initial satisfaction to those who believed the strategy was working. But simultaneously, imports from Mexico surged, often with a significant, if not dominant, Chinese input. What looked like a rebalancing was, in many cases, simply a rerouting. The trade deficit with China, far from being eliminated, was effectively masked by this new pipeline. Goods once labeled "Made in China" and shipped directly to U.S. ports were now labeled "Made in Mexico" after minimal processing. They arrived through our southern border. Yet they still contained the vast majority of their value from Chinese components. The consumer might see a Mexican label, but the economic reality was that the underlying production, the value creation, was still deeply embedded in China. This perpetuated the trade deficit, albeit through a more circuitous route. It meant that Trump's initial America First manufacturing push had, in many respects, been outmaneuvered. But the issue extends far beyond simple consumer goods like televisions or sneakers. This is where the geopolitical chess match truly intensifies. It moves from a battle over everyday products to a fight for technological supremacy. It is a fight for control over critical future industries. Chinese companies are not just using Mexico as a manufacturing base for electronics. They are setting up shop in strategically critical sectors. These sectors are at the heart of the US-China economic rivalry. We have already mentioned BYD's planned mega factory for electric vehicles in Mexico. This is not just about selling cars. It is about establishing a dominant position in the rapidly expanding global EV market, a market the US is aggressively trying to lead. Furthermore, as noted with Foxconn and NVIDIA, Chinese-linked operations in Mexico are becoming crucial nodes for advanced AI components. This is the very cutting edge of technology. It is the foundation for future economic and military power. This strategic positioning is a direct challenge to the United States' overarching efforts to decouple from China in critical technologies. The Biden administration, much like Trump's, has recognized the existential threat posed by Chinese technological dominance. Policies have been enacted to limit China's access to advanced semiconductors, to prevent its firms from dominating 5G infrastructure, and to foster domestic innovation in areas like AI and quantum computing. But if China can simply move its production and assembly of these critical components to Mexico, just across the US border, it effectively bypasses those very restrictions. It is like trying to build a firewall around your network, only to discover your competitor has installed their own server inside your perimeter, connected to an outside network. This is the profound realization that has likely dawned on former President Trump and his advisors. The very trade agreement, USMCA, was designed to protect North American industry. It was intended to create a bulwark against Chinese economic influence. Instead, it inadvertently became a Trojan horse. It provided a legitimate, legal pathway for Chinese economic and technological influence. This influence established a strong foothold in the Western Hemisphere, just south of the US border. This is not merely about cheaper t-shirts or consumer electronics. It is about the industrial base of the future. It is about control over artificial intelligence, electric vehicle infrastructure, and other technologies that will define global power for decades to come. The economic backdoor in Mexico is not just a nuisance, it is a strategic vulnerability. This intricate web of trade, tariffs, and geopolitical maneuvering places Mexico in an incredibly precarious position. On one hand, Mexico has benefited immensely from this influx of foreign direct investment, not just from China, but also from other global companies seeking to nearshore their operations to access the US market. This investment has brought jobs, it has stimulated local economies, and it has led to significant export surges. In 2025 alone, Mexican manufacturing exports to the US increased by a remarkable 9%. This is a testament to its newfound role as America's top trading partner. This economic boon has been a significant driver of growth and prosperity for Mexico. This makes it a difficult proposition to simply turn away foreign investment. Mexico is caught between a desire for economic growth and the overwhelming pressure from its powerful northern neighbor. This is precisely where Trump's dual leverage comes into play. A two-pronged attack that brilliantly uses both public opinion and economic pressure. The fentanyl crisis provides the perfect public justification. It is a tragic, undeniable humanitarian issue that garners widespread popular support for aggressive action. The stick here is the threat of military intervention against cartels. This is a highly visible and emotionally resonant issue. It appeals to a broad base of American voters. It creates a powerful moral imperative for action. This allows Trump to frame his demands on Mexico as essential for American lives and national security. But beneath this public spectacle, the true target is the economic backdoor created by the USMCA loophole. This is the carrot. Trump can dangle the continued unimpeded access to the enormous U.S. market, a market that is absolutely vital to Mexico's economic well-being. But this access comes with a critical contingency. Mexico must curtail Chinese economic influence within its borders. The message is clear. We can continue our record-breaking trade, but you must stop being a conduit for our geopolitical rival. There are already initial signs that Mexico is succumbing to this pressure. Mexico's new president, Claudia Sheinbaum, is a pragmatist facing immense economic realities. She has already demonstrated a clear shift away from unfettered Chinese investment. Her administration has initiated anti-dumping investigations against Chinese steel and aluminum. She is taking concrete steps to protect domestic industries from what she perceives as unfair competition. She has also imposed tariffs on Chinese textiles. This further signals a willingness to push back against the tide of cheap Chinese imports. These moves are not just about protecting Mexican industry. They are a clear response to the implicit and sometimes explicit demands from the United States. Mexico, while benefiting from Chinese investment, understands that its long-term economic prosperity is inextricably linked to its relationship with the U.S. And that relationship now comes with conditions. The, quote, fentanyl war, then, becomes a powerful, publicly justifiable means to an entirely different, deeper, and far more strategic economic end. If Trump's strategy succeeds in forcing Mexico to close its doors to Chinese economic influence, what happens next? Chinese companies will not simply pack up and vanish from the global stage. They are relentless, adaptable, and masters of finding new avenues. Their capital and manufacturing prowess will seek out the next backdoor. We could see a massive redeployment of Chinese foreign direct investment into countries like Vietnam, India, Thailand, or other Latin American nations. These countries, eager for investment and economic growth, could quickly become the next nearshoring hubs. This would perpetuate this global whack-a-mole dynamic. The U.S. tries to contain Chinese influence, and China continually finds new routes to market. This is not a one-time fix. It is an ongoing, evolving struggle for economic positioning. This shift has profound implications for multinational corporations. This includes American, European, and Asian firms that have already invested billions of dollars in Mexico. These companies built factories, they established logistics networks, they developed supply chains specifically to serve the U.S. market from Mexico, leveraging the USMCA benefits. If Trump's administration pushes for a renegotiation of USMCA, or if it imposes stricter rules of origin that genuinely force a higher percentage of non-Chinese content, it will trigger an expensive and disruptive realignment of these carefully constructed supply chains. Companies might be forced to tear up existing contracts, relocate facilities, or find entirely new suppliers. This could lead to increased operational costs and significant delays. Consider the electric vehicle sector. The U.S. has invested heavily in incentives and subsidies. These are designed to promote domestic EV production and reduce reliance on Chinese batteries. But if a significant portion of EV components, particularly critical ones like batteries or their raw materials, originates in China, even if assembled in Mexico, those U.S. subsidies could be curtailed or eliminated. This impacts any company assembling those EVs in Mexico or elsewhere for the U.S. market. It forces these companies into an arduous and costly search for non-Chinese component sources. This search highlights the deep integration of China into virtually every global manufacturing sector. This is not just about tariffs. It is about strategically denying China access to key value chains, even if it means disrupting friendly nations. Now, let us talk about the inevitable, often inconvenient truth: the costs for U.S. consumers and businesses. While the stated goal of Trump's strategy is to bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. and secure critical supply chains, any stricter tariffs on Mexican-made goods will inevitably lead to higher prices, even those primarily aimed at curtailing Chinese influence. Your next car, your new television, your household appliances. all could become more expensive. This is the trade-off. The dream is to revitalize U.S. domestic manufacturing. The reality is that domestic production often comes with higher labor and operational costs. This can lead to either persistent inflationary pressures for consumers, or it can make American businesses struggle to compete globally. They are caught between the desire for national security and the pressures of market economics. The previous shift to Mexico created clear winners. Mexican real estate investors saw land values surge. Logistics companies capitalize on increased cross-border traffic. Savvy manufacturers understood the nuances of the USMCA and quickly rerouted their supply chains. If Trump's strategy succeeds and that backdoor is slammed shut, a new set of winners and losers will emerge. Who will benefit from the next wave of factory relocations to Vietnam or India? Who will lose out as companies abandon their Mexican investments? Investors may pay close attention to these geopolitical currents. They often dictate the flow of capital and the creation of wealth. At its heart, this is a microcosm of the larger, enduring U.S.-China economic supremacy battle. It is a fight over who will control the 21st century's industrial base. Who will dominate critical technologies? And who will have unfettered access to the world's largest markets? Nations like Mexico find themselves caught squarely in the crossfire. They are powerful pawns in a strategic game far larger than their own borders. This is not a temporary skirmish. It is a fundamental struggle for global leadership. And it will continue to shape our world for decades to come. This pattern of surface-level news obscuring profound structural shifts is not new. We have seen it before, repeatedly. Cast your mind back to the 2008 financial crisis. The headlines screamed about subprime mortgages, about irresponsible borrowers and greedy lenders. That was the surface. But the real story, the underlying mechanism that brought the global economy to its knees, was the dizzying complexity of derivatives. It was collateralized debt obligations. It was the catastrophic failure of credit rating agencies. The true forces at play were hidden beneath layers of financial jargon. Then consider the 2020 COVID pandemic. The daily news cycle was consumed with infection rates, death tolls, and the race for vaccines. That was the visible, immediate crisis. But the hidden, profoundly impactful force shaping the economic landscape was central banks around the world. They injected trillions of dollars in liquidity. They flooded markets with capital. And they massively inflated asset prices. The stock market soared even as Main Street struggled. This was a direct result of that unseen economic intervention. The pattern repeats time and again. The public narrative focuses on fentanyl, on border security, on the tragic consequences of drug trafficking. And while these issues are undeniably real and urgent, they obscure far more profound structural economic shifts happening beneath the surface. They serve as a powerful pretext for a geopolitical maneuver. A maneuver that has far-reaching implications for global trade and technological dominance. So let us distill this into the core insight. Donald Trump's fentanyl war is not what it seems. It is not merely a crusade against drug cartels, as politically expedient as that may be. It is a brilliant, ruthless, and highly strategic economic move. It is designed to close a critical backdoor that China has meticulously used to circumvent U.S. tariffs. It is also meant to expand China's economic and technological influence directly into North America via Mexico. It is a move to reassert American economic leverage. It is a move to reshape global supply chains in a way that truly contains China. In a world where headlines are designed to grab attention rather than illuminate truth, an actionable takeaway suggests this. It is important to look beyond the immediate news cycle. It is important to understand the underlying trade agreements, understand the intricate shifts in global supply chains, and understand the deep-seated geopolitical motivations that truly drive policy decisions. Do not accept the surface narrative at face value. Dig deeper. Question the official story. Consider what the real intent is. Consider what the unspoken objective is. By seeing the structure instead of just the surface, by understanding the intent instead of just the pretext, one can transform from being a reactive participant to a proactive architect of one's own economic future. This empowers individuals to anticipate market shifts, to identify emerging opportunities, and to make far more informed decisions about investments, careers, and their place in a world of constant, often hidden, change. This is how one may gain an edge in a complex and rapidly evolving global economy.